Good morning. Welcome to Capitol Report Morning Update. I'm Diane Smith. Today is Tuesday, May 17th. Glad you could be with us. Here's the latest from the state capitol this morning. Details of the concession deal reached by the Malloy administration and CBAC, the State Employees Bargaining Coalition, are now being revealed. One interesting provision, an effort to reduce health care costs by requiring employees to sign a pledge to get regular health screenings and checkups. If they do not, they could pay an extra monthly premium. The framework for the agreement is now posted online at the CBAC site, and now the lengthy process of rank and file approval begins. Also going on today, the House is in session with a scheduled start time of noon. Also, the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee has SB 1015, the medical marijuana bill, on the agenda today. It was referred to the committee by the Senate last week after passing the Judiciary and Public Health Committees. And the Environment Committee will consider SB 1 today, the major energy reform bill out of the Energy and Technology Committee this session. It's designed in part to lower electricity costs in Connecticut. It has passed 3 committees so far. Meanwhile, the Appropriations Committee considered a number of bill referrals from the House and Senate yesterday. Among them, SB 1138, which would strengthen Connecticut's school bullying laws by including cyberbullying. It passed by a vote of 43-2. Also, SB 1227, which addresses urban youth delinquency and violence, as well as the criminal liability of parents or guardians of children who illegally possess guns. It passed by a vote of 26-19. And HB 6629, which builds upon legislation passed last session concerning domestic violence, coming out of House Speaker Donovan's Domestic Violence Task Force. It passed the Appropriations Committee unanimously after much discussion over the fiscal note, which states that programs were to be funded within existing appropriations. When a bill comes to the Appropriations Committee for consideration, the fiscal note is of top concern, and cost has been top of mind for many who are drafting bills this year. One bill out of the Education Committee making its way through the legislative process right now would actually delay major education reforms at the high school level due to current fiscal concerns. That secondary school reform bill was signed into law last year, and it would have implemented new high school graduation requirements beginning with the graduating class of 2018. Voting to delay was a tough call for many on the Education Committee back in March. Even the 2 co-chairs found themselves on opposite sides.
Let me start off by saying that the first 4 sections are painful for me to be in support of today, and I'm hopeful that perhaps it will change down the road as we work on the budget. They delay by 2 years the implementation of secondary school reform. Now, we do this because Race to the Top dollars that we sought last year were not received by the state of Connecticut, and the state budget as currently structured does not provide dollars to either the State Department of Ed or the localities that would be necessary to implement these reforms. Should we manage to find those dollars, I strongly support secondary school reform. I think we have to go that direction. If we want our children ready for the 21st century, we need a 21st century curriculum, and I will be working to find those dollars. But if we don't find those dollars, I believe we have to be ready to countenance the delays in sections 1 through 4.
I am not supportive of the delays. I feel that by delaying these implementations, that we're putting Connecticut in a situation where if there were some new opportunities to take advantage of some federal money over the next 6 months or so, as our president keeps talking about school reform, that if we keep delaying, implementing these reforms, I'm concerned that we're going to position ourselves in a way that we will not be able to take advantage of any possible federal program dollars. I don't like the idea of delaying increased high school graduation requirements, to delay the start from the class of 2018 to the class of 2020, requiring school districts to collect information on students' career and academic choices, delaying that another 2 years from 2012 to 2014. to delaying, excuse me, developing or approving end-of-course exams from July 1st of 2012 to 2014. We're behind the 8 ball right now, and I'm not going to be voting for this bill.
Well, after passing the Education Committee, the bill, HB 6498, has also passed the Appropriations Committee to date and awaits further action in the House. Joining us now to talk about that and other education issues are two members of the Education Committee, State Representative Gail Lavielle, a Republican from Wilton, and State Representative Matt Lesser, a Democrat who represents Middletown. And both of you voted for the delay. Good morning, and thank you for being with us. I gather that was a difficult decision, though, to have to make.
I think that I described it in the Education Committee as wrenching. I actually did vote for the delay both in education and in appropriations. But it was not something that I did easily. The reforms that were voted on last year in Public Act 10-111 were, of course, the impetus for that was to apply for the Race to the Top grants.
Right.
But I believe...
Funds that we did not get.
Exactly. Yeah. But I am a firm believer that we needed to do that anyway. We needed to do something about the achievement gap in this state, which is the worst in the country, the gap between our least performing, our worst performing and our best performing schools. But obviously we did not get the money. There were quite a few reforms in that public act, and the graduation requirements for high schools were just one of them. One of the reasons I was able to bring myself to vote for this, there were two really. One was that two of those major reforms were preserved. The putting in place of an information system to track student performance with unique identifiers, and teacher performance and school performance. And the other is putting in place a model teacher evaluation system that will link teacher performance to student learning outcomes. The other reason that I voted for this was because the current budget that was passed, which I voted against, does ask taxpayers to pay for the largest tax increase in Connecticut history. And a lot of details for that, but I could not see the way clear to that.
Lesser for a minute. The only way really to have pushed that ahead, I guess, unless there are funds somewhere that haven't been identified yet, would be to pass it off to the municipalities. And I don't think you were going to get a good reception with that, because we're talking about a number of somewhere in the neighborhood of $29 million just to accommodate those additional graduation requirements.
Well, it wasn't. Yeah, Diane, thanks for bringing that up. I think it wasn't just the impact on municipalities. We're also looking at an implementation consequence for the State Department of Education, and so it was the two of those. But Gail's absolutely right. You know, there are a number of provisions of the 2010 Race to the Top bill that are still in effect. Also mentioned the alternate route for certification for school administrators, and those are still very much in effect. But the graduation requirements, the part of the secondary school reform, those we really have to delay, and we had to move enormous weight to try to protect, hold harmless the school districts of our state, and make sure that we continue to fund teacher mentoring programs and other vital programs at the state level to protect our investments in education. And I think the calculus was of the committee, legislative leaders, that we just can't provide this additional resources this year because it's tough enough in this budget environment to maintain the status quo.
Let's talk a little bit about that teacher performance model that you discussed. How would that work?
Well, there was another bill that has also passed through Education and Appropriations, Senate Bill 1160, which focuses just on that. Unfortunately, I don't think it goes far enough, but it's a first attempt to directly tie teacher evaluation to learning outcomes for students. You know, when you're looking in any industry, and this is not an industry, but any sector where people are being evaluated on their performance, I've never run into one in 26 years in the corporate world where results weren't factored in. And right now we have a system where sometimes it's the last teachers who were hired. If there are layoffs, they're the ones who have to go, even if they're performing better than the others. So 1160 is a start. It systematizes how you help teachers who aren't performing up to par. It gives a framework to help them improve, and it also fixes deadlines if they don't improve. Then there are consequences.
Representative Lesser, this is a hot issue because, of course, it directly goes at the idea of teacher tenure. How do you stand on this performance bill?
Well, I strongly support 1160, and what sets 1160 apart from other approaches that other people have proposed is that it actually brings all of the stakeholders to the table. Because if you are going to push a model teacher evaluation system, you need to have confidence from all the stakeholders in the process to make sure that the process is fair, that teachers aren't being singled out unfairly for harsh criticism. And I think that bringing the stakeholders together has been a barrier in the past. It's why past attempts have failed. And I think that's what really sets 1160 apart. So you can say, yes, I wish the bill were stronger, but the point is you need to have all the stakeholders together, and that's what this bill does.
Let's talk a little bit about the starting age for kindergarten. As I understand it, right now, kids in a kindergarten classroom can be almost 18 months apart from the youngest children to the oldest children that are in the same class. There's an effort now to try to consolidate, to try to get the kids all at about the same age, but there's been a lot of opposition to it. Representative Lesser, people say this is going to cut people off, that kids who can't afford preschool but would be going directly into kindergarten are going to be delayed a year. How do you feel about it?
Well, there's a bill out there, Senate Bill 929, which would move the start age for kindergarten to children with birthdays after September 30th, who turn 5 at that point. And I think the way the bill is drafted right now, it says it only it ties that to providing universal pre-kindergarten to make sure that if you are ensuring that everybody is 5 when they start kindergarten, that you're not in effect also creating a new problem of creating a child care problem by not having enough seats for kids. I think that's something we need to continue to look at and make sure that that's there. I think the only issue that we're sort of wrestling with is if you do universal pre-K, there's a $30 million fiscal note, and at this point, while I strongly support the goal of providing universal pre-K, that $30 million is a tough number to wrestle with, and it's something I know that the legislative leaders are looking very closely at.
So, Representative Lavielle, can this pass without that portion that would provide for universal pre-K? I mean, $30 million is a lot of money to come up with this year.
It's a lot of money, but this is the 929 Achievement Gap bill actually pegs that to 2015. It's a school year
So it wouldn't be in
2015
this
to
budget.
16.
Okay.
But that's still something to be very mindful of, because right now the fiscal note says that will represent a $5 million cost. It would affect about 1,600 kids, 600 of whom would receive aid for school readiness programs right now from the state. So that's about $5 million, although it would save some of the local school districts money because they're waiting to go to school. Now, there's another factor to take into account, which is that at the bill that just passed in the Senate, 930, does bring the obligatory kindergarten starting age down to 6. Previously, parents were allowed to wait until kids were 7.
Call it redshirting, I think.
That's right, to make it more advantageous for kids who are older in their class. But now you must enroll your child by the age of 6, which will help to make the kindergarten classes a little more cohesive and consistent in age.
Because at that age, 18 months is a huge difference. One last thing before we have to go, and that is wanted to talk a little bit about school fees. I'm familiar with the idea that when school budgets are tight, kids are asked to pay for participating in athletics. Fees are now applying to lots of other things as well.
Well, Diane, I think that's a problem that I've been wrestling with this session, and I've actually been able to work with